The massive screen in Earth's deep space monitoring station lit up with an unusual pattern. Tom Baker, the night shift operator, sat up straight in his chair, his coffee forgotten. The energy signature pulsing across his display didn't match anything in their database. "Hey, Dr. Wilson, you might want to take a look at this," Tom called out, his eyes never leaving the screen. The chief scientist walked over, her usual calm demeanor shifting to intense focus as she studied the readings. "Send this to the council immediately," she ordered, reaching for her tablet. "These energy patterns, they're artificial, but they're like nothing we've ever seen." Within hours, the United Earth Defense Council scrambled their most advanced research vessel, the Explorer, to investigate. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak by as they traveled at speeds that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. Dropping out of faster-than-light travel in 3, 2, 1, the ship's navigator announced. The view through the main window shifted from streaking stars to a normal space view. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Floating in the darkness of space were the remains of what had clearly been a massive civilization. Broken space stations, shattered ships, and debris formed a cloud around a devastated planet. The scene reminded Walker of ancient photographs of shipwrecks, but on a cosmic scale. "Life support readings?" Walker asked, breaking the heavy silence. "None, sir," replied the sensor operator. "Whatever happened here, it happened months ago." Walker ordered the Explorer closer to the ruins. As they approached, they noticed something odd about the debris pattern. This hadn't been a natural disaster or an accident. The destruction showed clear signs of deliberate, systematic attacks. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we're picking up a signal. It's some kind of automated beacon. Can you decode it?" "Working on it now. It's broadcasting in multiple formats. One of them matches basic mathematical patterns we use for universal communication." The message began playing through the ship's speakers. A calm, alien voice spoke in a rough approximation of human language, clearly translated through multiple layers of mathematical conversion. "This is the final warning of the Bright Star Coalition. To any who find this message, they are coming. The hunters, they cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped. They hunt, they kill, they destroy. Everything. Our weapons did nothing. Our shields failed. Our logic failed. We were the fourth civilization they found. We will not be the last." The message continued with technical data about the attackers, but Walker was looking at something else now. His tactical officer had just completed a broader scan of nearby systems. "Captain," the tactical officer said, his voice shaking slightly, "I've found 3 more destroyed civilizations within scanning range, all showing the same pattern of destruction." Walker walked to the front of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the graveyard of a dead civilization. "Send everything we found back to Earth, immediately, and prepare for a broader search pattern. We need to know if any of these civilizations had survivors." As the Explorer moved through the debris field, they found more messages. Each one painted the same picture of an unstoppable force that moved through space, destroying everything in its path. The hunters, as each message named them, didn't communicate, didn't take prisoners, and didn't leave survivors. But something about the messages caught Walker's attention. Each destroyed civilization had tried to fight the hunters the same way, with logical, predictable defensive strategies, with careful, well-planned responses, with reason and order. "Maybe," he muttered to himself, "that's why they lost." The explorers spent 3 more days documenting everything they could find. They recovered data crystals, studied weapon signatures, and mapped the pattern of destruction. When they finally jumped back toward Earth, they carried with them a warning, but also perhaps a hint at humanity's only advantage. Because if these hunters truly destroyed everything logical and predictable they found, then humanity's chaos might be their only hope. Walker looked at the final report he would send to Earth. At the bottom, he added his own note. "These hunters haven't met humans yet, They've never faced an enemy who embraces chaos, who acts on gut feeling, who throws logic aside when needed. Maybe that's exactly what we need to be. The explorer raced back toward Earth, carrying its dark warning about humanity's newest and deadliest threat. The hunters were coming, but for the first time, they might face an enemy they couldn't predict. The emergency alarm blared through Earth's orbital defense station as another set of unknown ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Over the past week, this had become an almost daily occurrence, but these ships were different from the explorers' initial discovery. They were still functioning, and they were running from something. "More refugees, sir," reported Officer Mike Reed, watching the radar screen. "3 ships this time. Their engines are barely working." Defense Commander Peter Wood studied the approaching vessels. Like the others that had arrived over the past few days, these ships were packed with survivors from different alien species, all fleeing the same enemy. "Guide them to Safe Zone B," Wood ordered, "and get the translator teams ready." Down on Earth, in the newly established Refugee Processing Center in Geneva, Dr. Lisa Hayes prepared to interview the latest survivors. The room was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Tall, crystalline creatures that spoke through light patterns, floating gas-based life forms contained in special chambers, and even some that looked almost human. A translator device hummed to life as the first refugee from the new group entered the room. The alien was insect-like, its outer shell showing signs of damage from recent battles. "Please," the alien began, its words converted to English by the translator. "You must understand what's coming. The hunters, they don't stop. They never stop. Tell us about your encounter with them," Lisa said gently, recording every word. "We were a peaceful trading species. When they entered our system, we followed all standard first contact protocols. We tried to communicate. We offered peace. The aliens' antennae trembled. They responded by destroying our outer colonies, one by one, methodically." As the interview continued, Lisa noticed the same pattern she had heard from other refugees. The hunters attacked in precise, calculated ways. They studied their victims' defense patterns and then exploited them perfectly. Every logical response, every standard military tactic, failed completely. Later that day, Lisa sat in the United Earth Defense Council meeting, presenting her findings. The room was silent as she showed holographic images of destroyed worlds, now numbering 12 known civilizations. "The pattern is clear," she explained, pointing to the data. "The hunters target species that rely on logic and predictable behavior. The crystalline beings tried perfect geometric defense formations, destroyed. The gas forms used mathematical probability to plan their counterattacks, annihilated. Every species that fought back with careful planning and strategy was defeated." Admiral Thompson, head of Earth's fleet, leaned forward. "And how many species have successfully fought them off?" "None," Lisa replied. "At least, none that followed conventional military doctrine." The room erupted in concerned murmurs, but Professor Alan White, a military historian, raised his hand with an unusual smile on his face. "Maybe," he said, "that's our advantage. Humanity has never been good at following the logical path. We're emotional, impulsive, and often completely irrational. Our military history is full of victories that defied all logical explanation." The council members looked at each other as this idea sank in. What if humanity's greatest weakness, our unpredictable nature, could become our greatest strength? Just then, an aide rushed into the room with urgent news. The long-range sensors had detected a hunter scout ship entering a nearby system. They were getting closer. Admiral Thompson stood up. "We need to prepare our defenses, but not like the others did. We'll do it our way, the human way." As the meeting ended, Lisa walked to the refugee center's observation deck. Below, she could see humans and aliens working together, preparing for the coming storm. Engineers were modifying alien weapons with human innovations. Military strategists were learning about hunter tactics while developing completely unorthodox responses. For the first time since the refugees arrived, Lisa felt a spark of hope. The hunters had never faced humans before. They had never dealt with beings who would ignore logic to follow their gut feelings, who would choose hope over probability, who would fight with passion instead of precision. The pattern was clear, but this time, humanity was ready to break it. In the dim light of her research lab, Dr. Anna Miller stared at the holographic display showing hunter attack patterns. For 3 weeks straight, she had analyzed every piece of data from the refugee ships and the destroyed civilizations. Something about the hunters' behavior nagged at her mind. "Play it again," she told the computer, watching as the red dots representing hunter ships moved across the screen. Their attacks weren't just organized. They were perfect. Too perfect. The doors slid open, and Major Bill Foster walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Any progress?" he asked, handing her one of the cups. "Look at this," Anna pointed to the display. "Every hunter attack follows exact mathematical patterns. When their enemies retreat, the hunters predict their exact escape route. When their targets call for help, the hunters are already waiting at the rescue point." Bill watched the patterns play out, like they can read minds. "No," Anna said, her eyes lighting up with sudden understanding. "Like they're machines. Not living machines, but something more evolved. They don't think like organic beings. They calculate. Every response, every move, is based on pure logic and probability." She quickly pulled up footage from the most recent refugee interviews. "See here. The gas form beings tried to escape using complex mathematical jump patterns. The hunters predicted every jump. The crystal beings used perfect geometric formations. The hunters broke them apart in seconds." Bill leaned closer to the screen. "So they can predict anything that follows logical patterns." "Exactly." Anna started typing rapidly, bringing up new simulations. "But look what happens when I add random elements to the defense patterns." The simulation showed hunter ships becoming confused, their perfect formations breaking down when faced with completely unpredictable movements. "Their weakness is chaos theory," Anna explained. "They can't predict what they can't calculate. And humans," she smiled, "we're the most chaotic species in the galaxy." Just then, the lab's communication screen lit up. It was Admiral Thompson. "Dr. Miller, Major Foster, you need to see this. We just got footage from a destroyed hunter scout ship. One of our patrol vessels encountered it yesterday." The screen showed a brief battle. The human ship, instead of following standard space combat protocols, had performed a series of seemingly random maneuvers. The hunter vessel had tried to adjust, its movements becoming increasingly erratic before the human ship destroyed it. "The patrol captain said he just went with his gut," Thompson explained. "He ignored all standard combat procedures and did what felt right. The hunter ship couldn't adapt." Anna quickly added this new data to her simulations. "It's not just about being unpredictable," she said, watching the patterns emerge. "It's about being human. Our emotions, our instincts, our ability to make split-second decisions that defy logic. These aren't weaknesses against the hunters. They're weapons." Bill watched the simulation play out. "So all those advanced species failed because they were too perfect. Their civilizations were built on logic and order," Anna nodded. "But humanity, we thrive in chaos. We make intuitive leaps. We follow hunches. We do things that make no logical sense but somehow work." Working through the night, Anna and Bill compiled their findings into a report for Earth's Defense Council. They included battle strategies that no military commander would normally consider, formations that changed randomly, attack patterns based on gut feelings rather than tactical analysis, and defense systems that incorporated controlled chaos. As dawn broke, Anna added her final notes. "The hunters are the perfect killing machines, but that's their weakness. They can only understand and predict patterns that make sense. Humanity's greatest strength is that we often don't make sense at all. We're emotional, intuitive, and irrational. And against the hunters, that makes us the perfect warriors. Looking out her lab window at the Earth's defense fleet in orbit, Anna felt a strange mix of fear and hope. The hunters had never failed to destroy a civilization they targeted, but they had never faced humans before. They had never encountered a species that turned chaos into an art form, that celebrated unpredictability, that trusted feelings as much as facts. For the first time in their history, the hunters were about to face an enemy they couldn't calculate. And that enemy was humanity. Commander Robert Torres stood on the bridge of the warship Defiant, watching 3 hunter vessels approach his small fleet of 5 ships. His hands gripped the command rail as he remembered Dr. Miller's research. Don't think like a military commander. Think like a human. Sir, his tactical officer called out, the hunters are forming their standard attack pattern. They're expecting us to take defensive positions. Torres smiled. Then let's disappoint them. Send this to all ships. Formation Dancing Storm. His crew looked at him with confusion. There was no such formation in any military manual, but that was exactly the point. Sir, his second-in-command asked carefully, what's Formation Dancing Storm? It's what my daughter calls her dance recital moves. Torres grinned. Everyone pick a different ship to follow. Then copy their movements, but with a 3-second delay. And change who you're following every 30 seconds. The crew exchanged glances but began implementing the bizarre orders. The 5 Earth ships started moving in what looked like a chaotic dance, each one following another in an ever-changing pattern. On the tactical display, the hunter ships' movements became jerky and uncertain. Their perfect formation wavered as their prediction algorithms failed to make sense of the human ships' movements. They're trying to find a pattern, Torres said, watching the enemy's confusion. But there isn't one. Lieutenant Parker, you like jazz music, right? Yes, sir. Take control of the Defiance movements. Fly her like you're dancing to jazz. Improvise. Parker's fingers flew over the controls, and the Defiant began weaving through space in smooth, unpredictable patterns. The other ships followed, each adding their own style to the movement. The hunter vessels fired, but their normally precise shots went wide. Their targeting systems, designed to predict logical evasive maneuvers, couldn't handle ships moving like dancers at a party. Sir, the sensor officer shouted, the hunter ships are showing signs of system stress. Their computers are trying to calculate too many random variables. Torres saw his chance. All ships, weapons free. Fire when it feels right. Don't wait for targeting solutions. The human fleet unleashed a barrage of fire that seemed to follow no pattern or plan. Shots came at random intervals, from random directions. 2 hunter ships, their systems overwhelmed by trying to process the chaotic data, failed to dodge in time. They exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The 3rd hunter vessel turned to retreat, but it moved in a predictable escape vector. Exactly what the humans were waiting for. All 5 Earth ships fired at once, their shots converging from different angles. The final hunter ship disappeared in a ball of flame. Silence fell over the Defiance bridge. Then someone started laughing. Soon, the entire crew joined in as they realized what had just happened. Send word to Earth Command, Torres ordered, still grinning. Tell them that chaos works. Within hours, the news spread across Earth and to all the refugee species. For the first time in known history, someone had defeated hunter ships in direct combat. The refugee aliens couldn't understand how the humans had won using tactics that defied all military logic. Back on the Defiant, Torres recorded his battle report. We didn't win because we had better weapons or stronger shields. We won because we stopped trying to fight like soldiers and started fighting like humans. We danced. We improvised. We followed our instincts. The hunters couldn't predict us because we weren't trying to be predictable. As the fleet headed home, Torres called his daughter. Hey, sweetheart, remember that crazy dance routine you showed me last week? The one you made up yourself? Well, you just helped us win our first battle against the hunters. How? She asked, confused. Because sometimes, he replied, The best way to fight isn't to follow the rules. It's to make up your own dance. The victory was small, but its impact was massive. Humanity had proved that the hunters could be beaten. Not with superior technology or brilliant strategy, but with something much more powerful: human unpredictability. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the galaxy had hope, and it came in the form of humans who dared to dance in battle. General Mark Davis walked through the massive training facility built in the Arizona desert, watching as alien species and humans trained together in what many called chaos combat. 6 months had passed since Commander Taurus's historic victory, and Earth had transformed into the galaxy's last hope. "You're thinking too much," a human instructor shouted at a tall, crystalline being. "Stop calculating angles. Move how you feel." The crystal alien, struggling to break centuries of ingrained logical thinking, closed its glowing eyes and started moving more naturally. Its light patterns shifted from rigid geometric shapes to flowing, organic swirls. "Better." The instructor smiled. "Now you're getting it." Davis stopped at the observation deck overlooking the main training arena. Below, hundreds of beings from a dozen different species practiced together. Some flew in simulators, learning to ignore computer-suggested flight paths in favor of instinct. Others worked on ground combat, mixing their natural abilities with human unpredictability. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" said Dr. Miller, joining him at the window. Since her breakthrough in understanding the hunter's weakness, she had become the lead scientist for the resistance. A month ago, most of them couldn't even consider acting without calculating every move, Davis replied. "Now look at them." In one corner, gas-form beings practiced quick response exercises, changing colors randomly instead of in their usual mathematical patterns. In another, insectoid aliens learned Earth dance movements to break their rigid battle formations. Latest report from the outer colonies. Miller handed him a tablet. 3 more hunter attacks repelled by ships using our chaos tactics. No casualties on our side. Davis nodded, remembering how impossible this would have seemed just months ago. And the refugee numbers. Growing daily. Word is spreading across the galaxy. Earth is the one place the hunters can't win. Below them, an alarm sounded, starting another training exercise. The arena filled with holographic hunter ships. Humans and aliens moved together, their responses completely unpredictable. Some dove straight at the enemy, others spun in spiral patterns, while others seemed to move randomly. "We're not just teaching them to fight," Miller observed. "We're teaching them to be free." The training session ended, and Davis headed to his next meeting. In the base's main hall, he passed walls covered with artwork from different species, paintings, light sculptures, and crystalline formations. All of them showed the same thing: the moment when each species broke free from pure logic and embraced chaos. The meeting room was filled with representatives from every allied species. One of the crystal beings stood to speak, its voice translated into English. "My people have lived by mathematical law for 10,000 years, it said. We thought humans were primitive because they followed feelings instead of formulas. We were wrong. In 3 months of training here, we have achieved what we thought impossible: true unpredictability." Similar reports came from other species. The gas forms had developed new combat techniques based on Earth weather patterns. The insectoids had created battle strategies inspired by human sports games. Each species found their own way to break free from logical constraints. After the meeting, Davis received an urgent message. A hunter fleet had been detected moving toward a populated system. The response force would include ships from 5 different species, all trained in Earth's chaos tactics. "Send them these orders," Davis told his communications officer. Quote, "Trust your instincts. Be unpredictable. Make it up as you go along. Fight like humans." End quote. Later that night, Davis stood in the desert outside the base, looking at the stars. Behind him, the sounds of training continued. Alien voices mixing with human laughter. The hum of simulators. The clash of practice combat. A young alien cadet approached him, its crystalline form glowing softly in the darkness. "General," it said, "I finally understand what my instructor meant about feeling the moment. For the first time in my life, I'm not calculating my next move. I'm just living it." Davis smiled. The hunters had spent millennia perfecting their logical killing machines. But here in the desert, on a planet they had never visited, their perfect system was falling apart. Because humanity had taught the galaxy something the hunters could never understand. Sometimes the best strategy is having no strategy at all. The resistance was growing stronger every day, not through better weapons or tactics, but through something far more powerful: the freedom to be unpredictable. The massive holographic display in Earth's Defense Command Center showed thousands of red dots approaching the solar system. Admiral Thompson stared at the screen, his face grim. After months of losing to human chaos tactics, the hunters had finally revealed their full force. "They're committing everything," said Lieutenant Rogers, analyzing the sensor data. "This isn't just an attack force. This is their entire fleet." The room fell silent. The hunters, for the first time in their known history, had abandoned their careful, methodical approach. They were charging straight for Earth with every ship they had. "They're desperate," Admiral Thompson said, a slight smile forming on his face. "We've made them act irrationally. They've never done that before." Emergency alarms sounded across the planet as Earth activated its full defense network. In orbit, the combined fleet of human and alien ships moved into position. Every ship crew had been trained in chaos combat, ready to fight with instinct rather than logic. On the command deck of the flagship Freedom, Captain Maria Hayes watched the hunter fleet approach. Her crew, a mix of humans and aliens, waited for her orders. The traditional response would be to form a defensive line, to protect Earth with careful planning and strategy. "All ships," she broadcast across the fleet, "remember your training. No patterns, no formations. Everyone pick your own targets and fight your own way. Just remember one thing: be unpredictable." The hunter fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, their ships moving in perfect geometric patterns. But something was different. Their usually precise movements showed signs of strain, of desperation. "They're scared," Hayes realized. They'd never failed before, and now they're terrified. The battle began. The hunter ships launched their first attack wave, expecting Earth's fleet to respond with standard defensive tactics. Instead, they faced pure chaos. Human ships spun and weaved in random patterns. Crystal ships pulsed with disorienting light shows based on Earth music. Gas-form vessels created unpredictable atmospheric disturbances. Each defender fought in their own unique way, creating a battlefield that defied all logical analysis. The hunters' perfect formations began to break apart. Their targeting computers, designed to predict logical responses, were overwhelmed by the sheer randomness of Earth's defense. Ships that had never missed a shot in millennia were firing wildly into space. In the Defense Command Center, Admiral Thompson watched the battle unfold. "They're trying to adapt," he observed, "but they can't. Their entire existence is based on prediction and pattern recognition. And there are no patterns here to recognize." The hunter fleet's frustration became evident. Their ships began firing randomly, abandoning their precise targeting systems. Some ships crashed into each other, their collision avoidance algorithms unable to handle the chaos around them. "Keep pushing them," Hayes ordered her fleet. "The more they try to make sense of our movements, the more their systems will overload." Earth's defenders pressed their advantage. Ships performed maneuvers that no sane military commander would ever approve. Crystal beings created light patterns based on human abstract art. Gas-formed ships moved like leaves in a hurricane. Human vessels flew like they were dancing to jazz music. The hunter fleet, for the first time in their existence, began to retreat. But their retreat was clumsy, uncoordinated. Ships designed for perfect precision were trying to escape a situation their computers couldn't process. "They're running," Rogers announced, his voice filled with disbelief. "The hunters are actually running away." But Admiral Thompson shook his head. No, they're not just running. They're broken. We didn't just defeat their fleet. We destroyed their entire worldview. Every certainty they had about warfare, about logic, about their own superiority. It's all gone. The battle wasn't over. Many hunter ships remained, fighting with increasing desperation. But Earth had proven something incredible. The most feared species in the galaxy could be beaten, not by superior technology or better strategy, but by simply refusing to make sense. As the stars filled with the light of battle, humanity and its allies continued their chaotic dance of war. The hunters had brought their entire fleet to destroy Earth, but they had found something they never expected. A planet full of beings who turned unpredictability into an art form, and chaos into a weapon. The final battle for Earth had been raging for 6 hours. The remaining hunter ships, still numerous but fighting erratically, had formed a massive sphere around the planet. Inside Earth's Defense Command Center, Admiral Thompson watched as Dr. Miller rushed in with urgent news. "Admiral," she said, breathless, "the hunter ships are trying to synchronize their systems. They're attempting to create one giant prediction algorithm." Thompson looked at the tactical display. The hunter sphere was indeed pulsing with strange energy patterns. Their ships were linking together, combining their computing power in a desperate attempt to make sense of Earth's chaotic defense. "Perfect," Thompson smiled. "That's exactly what we wanted them to do." He pressed the command broadcast button. "All ships, Operation Mindstorm is now in effect. Remember, don't think, don't plan. Just act." Across the battlefield, Earth's defenders launched into action. But this time, they did something even more unpredictable. They started creating chaos in their own ranks. Human ships deliberately flew into each other's paths, missing collisions by inches. Crystal beings projected random light patterns that confused friend and foe alike. Gas-form vessels created swirling storms that caught their own allies in the turbulence. "Their linked systems are trying to process everything," Miller reported, watching the sensor readings. "Every random action, every near miss, every chaotic movement. Their combined algorithm is attempting to find patterns in all of it." The hunter sphere began to pulse faster. Their ships trembled as their united computer network struggled to analyze the overwhelming flood of random data. Captain Hayes, still commanding the flagship Freedom, saw her chance. "All ships, increase chaos by 50%. Do the opposite of what makes sense." Ships started flying backward while firing forward. Crews began playing loud music through their communication systems. Some vessels shut down their engines and drifted, only to fire them up randomly at full power. In the command center, the tactical display showed the hunter ships' energy signatures becoming increasingly unstable. "Their linked system is overloading," Miller announced. "They've committed so much computing power to understanding our chaos that they've forgotten to maintain their basic functions." The hunter sphere started to break apart. Ships lost power as their computers crashed, overwhelmed by the impossible task of predicting the unpredictable. Others fired at random, their targeting systems completely confused. "Now," Thompson ordered, "hit them with everything. Every ship, every weapon. Fire at will." Earth's defenders unleashed a storm of weapons fire unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Crystal ships fired beams that bounced off gas-formed vessels in impossible angles. Human vessels launched missiles that followed spiraling, random paths to their targets. The hunter fleet, their ships still linked in their failing attempt to process chaos, couldn't handle the assault. Their sphere collapsed completely as ships exploded or drifted powerless in space. "They're broadcasting something," a communications officer called out. The message, translated into English, played through the command center. "Error, error. Pattern recognition failed. Logic algorithms failed. Understanding impossible. Retreat impossible. Survival impossible." The message cut off as the remaining hunter ships began to self-destruct, their core programming unable to handle the complete failure of their logical worldview. In orbit around Earth, the defenders watched as the last hunter ships disappeared in flashes of light. For a moment, complete silence filled every communication channel. Then, from somewhere in the fleet, someone started laughing. The laughter spread from ship to ship, from species to species. Crystal beings chimed with joy, gas forms swirled in celebration patterns, and humans cheered. Admiral Thompson looked at Dr. Miller. "The most advanced killing machines in the galaxy," he said, "and we beat them by acting like crazy people." Miller smiled. "Not crazy. Human. We showed the galaxy that there's strength in unpredictability, power in emotion, and wisdom in sometimes ignoring logic completely." As Earth celebrated its victory, the refugee species began planning their return home. But they wouldn't go back the same. They had learned from humanity that the best defense against perfect logic was perfect chaos, and that the most powerful weapon in the universe was the ability to be unpredictable. The hunters, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, had finally met their match, not in superior technology or better tactics, but in humanity's embrace of chaos, emotion, and the beautiful unpredictability of being human.